Hello, Dale McDermott here with the CGLCC and welcome to the 2020 Digital LGBT Plus Global Business Summit. Before we get started on the session, CGLCC would like to recognise our presenting sponsor, TD Bank Group, along with all of our gold and silver sponsors and all of our sponsors for helping us to make this event happen. We would also like to recognise our translation partner, AI Media, for enabling us to deliver live caption translation in 3 languages, English, French and Spanish, and you can access those using the links below in the description box. I'd also like to draw your attention to the left-hand side of your screen to the networking and exhibit hall tabs, where over the course of the next 5 days you can connect with LGBT plus businesses, corporations and each other to help drive that power of connection. And finally, if you do like the content we are producing, please feel free to make a financial contribution using the donate link in the description box below. Thank you and enjoy your session.
Well, thank you, Dale, and thank you to the CGLCC for inviting us here today. My name is Debra. My pronouns are she, her, hers, and I'm the Supplier Diversity Manager for Kellogg Company. While none of our panelists today are seated in Canada, our President of Canada, Tony Chow, is a strong proponent of diversity and inclusion and supplier diversity. And we also have a great D&I council in Toronto, which recently published a cookbook online. So be sure to check that out. So thank you for joining us today as we share our journey from ERG to BERG. And because our bios are available online, we're not planning on getting into a lot of detail about that, but we would like to introduce ourselves and share a little bit about what brought us here today. So if we could kick off and each of you tell us a little bit about yourselves, we'll go alphabetically. Cheryl, if you can lead off, then Courtney, then Louise, please.
Good morning, all. This is Cheryl Gilliam, and I'm coming to you from Lansing, Michigan, the capital of the state of Michigan. And I was a past national co-chair for K Pride and Allies for a number of years. And currently I work in our legal and compliance area. Courtney?
Courtney, we can't hear you. Yeah, your microphone should turn from red to green. Luis, do you want to pick up?
Sure. Hi, my name is Luis Anabria. I am based out of our offices in Querétaro, Mexico, our business support center. I am a senior D&I specialist, a member of the Global Diversity and Inclusion team for Kellogg. And one of my main responsibilities, among many, is to offer back office support to the BERGs of our company.
Thank you. No, Courtney, we heard you just a moment ago, but now we can't. Is your microphone still red? It should be right below it's green, but we can't hear you. All right, keep working on it, and we'll start with Luis. Whatever combination you had done before, do it again, because we could hear you perfectly until now. So Luis, we're off to a bit of a bump, but that's all right, because we have got a lot of information to share today. Can you please tell us a little bit about Kellogg's D&I efforts? Take us back to the beginning. How did Kellogg start the D&I journey, and what does our program look like today?
Well, I would say first of all is that diversity and inclusion is at the core of everything we do here at Kellogg. And you can trace that back to pretty much the beginning of our company. If you look back at the early part of the 20th century, there are great examples that talk about how the company was committed to diversity and inclusion, even when diversity and inclusion wasn't a term or a common term in the corporate world. One example, for instance, is Kellogg was one of the first companies to hire a nutritionist/dietitian in its ranks. That dietitian and nutritionist was was actually a woman by the name of Mary Barber. She came in not order to be part of that team, but also to lead it. And there were great accomplishments that happened during her tenure at the company. I think one of the most relevant ones is, I don't know if you know, but she was the original creator of the Rice Krispie treats formula. So that dates back to the early 1920s, if you will. So it goes back all the way to that time. You can also think back to the Great Depression as well. And Kellogg was one of the first of few companies that actually expanded their work shifts during this time, created workforce shifts of 6 hours each to make sure that people had the opportunity to work during these most trying times. So these are examples early on our history of things that we were doing to help our community to elevate the value of everyone's contribution to the company, and at a time where diversity and inclusion wasn't mainstream. Fast forward that to the early 2000s, and I think this is where the actual birth of the D&I program starts here at Kellogg. And it would start with the creation of our first BERG in the company in the year 2000, and that was Women of Kellogg. And that was followed soon after by our Kellogg African American Resource Group as well. These were pretty much movements within our employees that organized themselves to create that sense of community and networking. And other groups followed soon after. The Office of Diversity and Inclusion was then officially founded in the company in the year 2005. So the Office of Diversity and Inclusion has been active for about 15 years already. Right now, the Office of Diversity and Inclusion, again, is strongly committed into creating an environment where diversity is leveraged as a competitive advantage, where all of our employees are conscious that we can only do that through inclusion and through promoting a sense of belonging within our employees. And we want to impact not only our workforce, but also the marketplaces and communities in which we work and operate.
Thank you. So when you talk about our employee resource groups, do we have international programming at this time?
And actually, there are 3 instances that I can think where our BERGs collaborate internationally with our HR partners, in which they create very robust international programming. And those 3 examples would be International Women's Day, mainly led by our WALK group, Women of Kellogg. The second one would be Pride, around Pride. The BERGs, K-Pride and Allies specifically, organizes chapters from Latin America and Europe to provide programming that is relevant globally, but also regionally specific as well. And the third one, which started a couple of years ago, is around World Mental Health Day. And this was something that was brought about through the efforts of capable and arcade vets and supporters, BERG, and quickly expanded to other areas of the world as well.
Thank you. And I think a couple things. We also have the Diversity and Inclusion Council, such as the one that's in Toronto, right? So that's another way that we approach DNA. And just as a shout out to Kellogg, we actually had pride flags flying at all 4 of our regional headquarters for Pride Month. And so again, while we don't necessarily have an established K-Pride and Allies in every region is part of DNI, is inclusive and celebrates Pride. So you touched on this a little bit. How many BERGs do we have now, and which groups do they represent?
Currently, we have 8 BERGs active at Kellogg. We already talked about Women of Kellogg and the Kellogg African American Resource Group as being the pioneers behind the ERG initiative here at the company. But we also have young professionals. We have KMERG, which is a employee resource group that focuses on highlighting the importance of multicultural employees. We also have Hola, which highlights the value of our Latino-based employees, K-Vets and supporters, and Capable. Out of those, we have Walk is the one that is truly international and has chapters all around our regions. K-Pride and Allies actually was the second one that started the expansion in other regions of the world, with their opening a chapter here in Latin America. Recently, they opened a chapter in Europe as well. And right now, there's been interest of K-Merch and young professionals also to kind of expand in the European geography as well.
Wonderful. Well, it sounds like the women of Kellogg has got a big anniversary this year, so that's wonderful. And Kellogg African American Resource Groups, CARG, has one coming up. So we need to celebrate those 20th anniversaries. That's very historic.
Correct.
Yes, definitely.
Before we move on, are there any other notable D&I efforts that you'd like to mention?
I would like to highlight all of the great work that the BERGs do, and we'll talk about this in a little bit more detail later, to incorporate insight not only into the betterment of our workforce, but also into the business strategies of the company, and developing insight that can help us breach through diverse consumers and marketplaces. I'm not going to provide any more detail because we're going to go into this a little bit more in our conversation.
I think that's called a teaser in show business, but thank you. So you've built a great foundation of where we came from. Cheryl, would you talk a little bit specifically about the beginnings of K-Pride and Allies? And for those of you on the call, we internally frequently say KPA for K-Pride and Allies. So if one of us slips and says KPA, you'll know what we're talking about.
Sure. Thank you, Debra, and thank you everyone on the call. I belong to all 8 of our BERGs at Kellogg. And the first one that I joined was K-Pride and Allies. And the path of K-Pride and Allies, it may be the similar one to some of your paths with your BERGs. It actually started out probably in 2007, 2008. It officially began in 2009. This was a path where it was a parallel path, mutually exclusive. The one path involved allies and some of our senior executives at Kellogg. There was an individual that got a promotion that was asked to move to headquarters from the Chicago area. They were terrified. They were totally out in the Chicagoland area, and now they're asked to move to Battle Creek, which is a small town in the state of Michigan. And the law still in the state of Michigan, not Kellogg, the laws in the state of Michigan state that you can be fired from your job, denied housing if you are gay. That's not what happened at Kellogg, but nonetheless, moving to this small town, you're worried what can happen to you when you leave the Kellogg building. So with all good stories, the allies gathered together, our senior executives, and they started talking about how can we help out not only this individual, but we're certain there are tons of gay people who are in the closet at Kellogg. So they began the conversations of creating a ERG to join WOC. Meanwhile, there's another path that's happening. And this path is happening on the Battle Creek campus, where an individual came to another ally and said, we desperately need some type of ERG for people like me. I'm tired of being in the closet. I want to come out, but I'm afraid to come out. So with any good poetry, those two paths, they didn't go this way. They came together and they sat down, our allies gathered, and with the support of strong out allies, K-Pride and Allies was born. They wanted to make sure that they had an avalanche of allies already with K-Pride and Allies before they launched. And that succeeded. We had over 100 folks that were on the initial launch of K-Pride and Allies. We had meetings where our seniors in our global HR, our CEO, et cetera, came out as strong allies in front of employees at a huge meeting across the street from our headquarters building. And this gave courage to people like me, because when I first joined K-Pride and Allies, I was so deep in the closet, I wasn't sure I ever get out. But because seeing our out strong allies, that helped me to get out.
Thank you. What were some of the challenges that K-Pride and allies first faced? You've said, there was strong leadership support, but you've also indicated that there was still a hesitancy on people to self-identify. So what were some additional challenges?
These are the challenges of most corporations in what some of us call the frozen middle. You see the CEO, you see the vice chair, you see the SVP of HR all coming out as strong allies, but you are terrified in your own group. You're terrified because of your middle management. You're terrified that if you come out, your name will now become public and you need to leave the doors of Kellogg and go out into the community, and you're afraid what could happen to you or your family members. These things are real. You're terrified if you go to your car, someone's going to scribble something negative on your car because you came out gay in your community. These things are real. And these are the challenges that K-Pride and Allies had to address immediately within the entire Kellogg company to make sure that we as gay folk had a safe space. And we had a tremendous campaign for our allies. We needed our allies to come out so we could come out in a safe space. We wanted to make sure there was no retaliation, however loud or quiet that was, because you came out and your manager, who has a strong bias, might hold something against you. So we started on the path of education within our company. We started educating folk about LGBT 101 to tell you the basics. We're people, we're humans, and that was a key struggle. And the more that happened, the more that we got our allies. And then if you heard something, you said something. So you can correct your coworker if they were talking negative talk, and educate them.
I think more and more we have come to realize globally that silence is complicity. I think it's really important that you're saying that it was the out allies that really were the turning point, because you can certainly have the corporate leadership saying this is something we need to do. You can certainly have individuals saying this is something I need to do to bring my whole self to work, but really having people stand up and say, as a company, this is what we need to do. So that's really helpful. From a K-Pride and Allies leadership position at this time of transition and growth, what actions did you take as a leader to help establish KPA as a valuable and permanent part of Kellogg?
Disarming preconceptions about the LGBTQ community. This required having a lot of closed door, after hours conversations with our senior leadership. This required having some very, very frank conversation with those at the top and having them take action. I would have communication with the president of North America, direct communications with my cell phone with the CEO at night, and we can have a open conversation. They can share their fears about what would happen, talking to our government relations folks, because the laws that are in at least the United States were not favorable. And I can just fast forward through all those communications. The pivot point, there are two major pivot points. One was in 2014. We're headquartered in the state of Michigan. When our company signed on to a coalition with other companies in this state to support the Elliott Larson Amendments Right movement, we signed on to that in 2014. That was pivotal because Kellogg isn't political, but that wasn't being political. That was standing up for the equality of all of our employees, especially those that live in the state of Michigan where we're headquartered. Now, the second pivotal point was June 26, 2015. We had been building and building and building since 2009. We even got our characters to appear at Pride events, and along the way, we had people coming out everywhere thanking us for K-Pride and Allies, because now they're free. They can be out. But the pivotal moment came on Marriage Equality Day, on that fateful Friday when we're all waiting to see what the United States Supreme Court would say. They're either going to say yes or no. We were hoping it would be a yes, but we had our beer to cry in if it was no, or our champagne good to go if it was yes. And it came out that morning. It was such a fantastic thing when they came out, just like in the old days, ringing the bell, and it was favorable. And there was such a celebration at Kellogg. It started at the very top and cascaded down. Our brands came out. Morningstar Farms came out in favor. Eagle had a rainbow Eagle. If you went on social media on Marriage Equality Day, you would see numerous Kellogg brands coming out in support, which was unheard of. And on those same social media pages, you had a lot of negative feedback. But by the end of the day, love overcame that negative feedback. It was so beautiful. And what was even more beautiful, the following week, we had a celebration at a old English style bar in the Battle Creek area, just to celebrate with our champagne, that now we can legally get married. Our CEO was on vacation that day. He heard about this celebration, stepped away from his vacation, and popped in there to celebrate with us. We had our CEO, the vice chairman of the board, and numerous other executives celebrating with us. That was the most beautiful thing.
I remember that. I was there. I was almost like a silence fell over the crowd when John Bryant walked in. And then the party resumed. So that really was a day to remember. Thank you so much, Cheryl. You took me down memory lane. Louise, Cheryl's shared with us some of the actions that she took early on as a leader of K-Pride and Allies, but what are some of the other things that were going on at Kellogg Company during this time in regards to our overall approach to D&I?
I think the first one was to kind of expand that message from a North American geography to all of our international location. That was certainly one of the main points of discussion at that point in time. The other thing, and very related to this, was the will of the BERGs to expand to other geographies, to teach other regions of the world what value these groups had in order to help cultivate that ultimate environment of inclusion and ultimate value of diversity that we want to create here in the company. So I would say those would be the main aspects at that particular point in time.
And I think this is also our transition time. So if you could explain the difference between ERGs and BRGs, and why does Kellogg have a BERG?
Sure.
It's all these historic things that are coming together at one time, isn't it?
ERGs historically were set up mainly as networking or social groups. Pretty much as Cheryl explained with the genesis of K-Pride and Allies at Kellogg, it was a group, an organization meant to bring people together so they can understand each other's background, similarities, plight that they might be facing in the workforce. That quickly evolved, not just to have that sense of connection or belonging, but also to start evolving the talent agenda within organizations. So these groups became much more active in terms of providing leadership opportunities to members of these unrepresented groups, or being active in recruiting efforts specific to their demographic group that they're representing, and providing visibility in leadership forums so that people that were not necessarily noticed were getting the opportunity to be noticed and being taken into account for promotion opportunities. That's when it started to kind of shift. And then the next part of that was the business resource group concept. And the business resource group concept said, okay, these groups have already achieved networking and socializing status. They're helping us with our talent management agenda in a sense, and now we also want to leverage them to help us provide business insight into our business plans. So they would leverage whatever insight that these groups might have to help drive forth the overall business strategies of companies. Now, your question is, why do we call it BERGs? And that was actually an interesting discussion at that time, because the employee resource groups didn't want to drop the employee aspect of it, because it was that portion of it that made it theirs, that made it sound like we are one. This is the place for us. And the business was saying, yes, but we also want the business aspect of things. So it was a very intelligent compromise to call it business employee resource group. So it was a way for the interest of the employee, but also the interest of the company to kind of come together and merge. And it has worked fantastically for us.
And Cheryl, I know you're really passionate about that. You're waiting to just jump in there for a minute, aren't you?
No, Louise said it beautifully. Especially with K-Pride and Allies, we still need, as an employee to employee, need that engagement. We still need to connect. We still need to tell our stories. We still need hugs. So there's no way we were going to drop the ERG from this, because we're not there yet. We're still on the path. Thanks, Louise.
So Cheryl, share with us how you, as an ERG leader, becoming a BERG leader, help show the value of diversity of thought, diverse employees with the company leadership, and then subsequently growing the membership of K-Pride and Allies, right?
And this is later going to segue into Courtney. As we're talking about growing as an employee resource group, and you're looking around the world, and you're looking at the media, you're looking at commercials, we're missing, at least in the United States, we were lagging. So again, we started some behind the scenes conversations. One of my passions is anti-bullying. We started an anti-bullying program years ago, probably 2010, right after K-Pride and Allies, and we made that all inclusive. And we kept pushing that. We did the education around it. But then we decided, rather than go out and be the business part during Pride Month, we thought we would go, because this is part of Kellogg's values, during October, which is Anti-Bullying Awareness Month, is to get that message out beyond the Kellogg walls. And so we partnered with GLAAD. And we sat down with the president of Kellogg North America and talked about how we can take this message out. Who best could take the message out than Tony the Tiger? So we came up with a campaign with anti-bullying, Stop Bullying in Its Tracks, using the paw prints from Tony the Tiger. He too is a strong ally. So between Tony the Tiger and Toucan Sam and some of our other characters, we started bringing forth that message, and we partner with GLAAD, and we kept that partnership up. And then we started looking at some things of how we can get that, and we still are looking for partnerships to get the messaging across for anti-bullying. And then the other thing that we presented to the business team, and we're working on this still, is to have more inclusive commercials. And we've done that. Canada actually did a good job. I think it was with Special K. They did a good job with a Special K commercial when they had two women kissing some time ago. And I think Europe had one also. I can't recall that one. Sorry, senior moment. But we are beginning to have more of those things out there, similar to what our other corporations are doing. It's a beautiful thing.
Thank you. So much history, so much great information. We really need to move into the present. Courtney, you've been really patient bringing us, along on this journey. First of all, is there anything that we missed or anything that you'd like to add? And then secondly, could you tell us what brought you to be part of the new generation or the current leadership of K-Pride and Allies?
Sure. And nothing was missed. I think just the excitement that I get in hearing Louise and Cheryl talk really gets me motivated for what's going to come in the future. And so laying that foundation is really great. And, a lot of hard work and a lot of things had to go into that, the journey that has been over 10 years in the process. What brought me into the co-chair role, I was previously leading for our Grand Rapids office, and my role in HR expands beyond Michigan, across the U.S., and so I wanted to be able to impact and work more closely with those people, and so taking it to that next strategic direction. And so I was mentoring with the current co-chairs for about a year. And then just recently, so I'm in my first year, about halfway into the first year as national co-chair. So that's what brought me into the role.
Well, thank you, because we love your fresh perspective and the direction you're taking us. And I think that might be the next question.
Deborah, you're on pause.
That our audience, from the start of your event, your mission, your goals, and how you plan a strategy for a growing organization like this.
Yeah, so I think there was a little bit of a technical delay there, but as far as how we approach our annual strategy based on our values and our mission, our vision and really the goal is equality. It's about inclusiveness. It's about ensuring that we have an open and safe work environment. And so beyond that we can have respect of employees, no matter sexual orientation, their gender identity, how they express themselves. We want everyone to feel that they can come to work as their true, authentic self, and that they're going to be recognized for how they present themselves and respected. So, taking that into consideration, our annual planning, we have some broader goals of where we want to go, which I think maybe we'll get into, but we take a look at, as Cheryl said, it's a journey. You're never done when it comes to inclusion. And so taking it year by year of what can we accomplish in the next 12 months to bring us closer to that end goal. And so, some aspects for 2020 that we're in now, I think is looking at how do we continue to be closer partnered to the business? How are we engaging employees with new ways and expanding on membership as a result of that?
Sounds good. Do you have some recent successes? We heard a lot of early successes. Do you have some recent successes that you'd like to share with the group? And everyone wants to know whether All Together will be available again this year.
Yeah, amid a lot of things happening in 2020, we have still been able to have a lot of progress, which has been very exciting to see. And starting off with the Super Bowl and partnering with Jonathan Van Ness for our Pop-Tart commercial, that came organically. He's been a consumer and has loved Pop-Tarts. And so that was a really exciting way to the year. We have partnered with GLAD, which, so not just for Spirit Day, we also donated some funds to help with COVID relief. And we're excited to see that those funds went across the U.S. because we have employees across the U.S. and globally, of course. But for our KPA North America group, it was important that we touched all states from California to New York with those efforts. Some other successes would be through, we have some employee training, both for our executive leadership. So they have a separate training, as well as down to all levels of the organization. I think, as you see new people join the organization or be promoted into manager level positions, the training is required. And so, and it's an ongoing conversation. It's not something we keep just for Pride Month, just for June, all year round. We want to keep this front of mind. And if people have questions, that it's a safe space that they can ask and have those answered. So I think those are some of our biggest successes, specifically partnering with some great organizations that can help us on this journey and have the resources and the subject matter expertise to help us with training our employees.
Sounds good. I'm going to go back and the questions. I think we covered quite a few. Yes, please, Cheryl.
I wanted to go back to making people feel comfortable. And still, because Courtney mentioned as we're getting new employees, it's still a journey. And with diversity inclusion, we make K Pride and Allies extremely visible. So when you're interviewing at Kellogg, when you're going to our website, you know we exist. So if you are part of the LGBTQ community, you will go and see that, oh my gosh, look at what they have, K Pride and Allies. We've talked to our allies to say, you of all people need to be visible and let it be known that it's a safe space. So we've included magnets and stickers that say, I am an out straight ally, because that's important. A person who's in the closet could be walking down the hallway, or a potential employee could be coming to the building. Well, not right now because of COVID, but come to the building and they see these things and they see a number of them and they know that it's a safe place and I want to work here.
Good point. Thank you. So going to our questions, Bill, yes, business, B stands for business employee resource groups. Kellogg is trying to blend the two. Javier, this group is really, none of them are in procurement. I'm the only one. You and I think we'll be talking later on this afternoon. We can talk about how we onboard small businesses into our procurement team. Luis, a question for you. Can you please help share your experiences in translating the global D&I policies at Kellogg to Mexico from a learning perspective? And learning is apropos. I think we're all on a learning committee at this point.
That is correct. I would first start that it really has not been difficult. And the reason for that is that diversity and inclusion is embedded not only in our corporate values, but it's also part of our global code of ethics. So anybody, regardless of the region of the world in which you work at, it's bound by either commitment to upholding the K values and following our global code of ethics. So with that as a guideline, it makes it easy for you to expand these diversity and inclusion guidelines to other regions of the world. And as you mentioned, Deb, we are actually on our journey right now to develop very thorough and very poignant and specific training as it relates to D&I in various areas by the creation of a Global Diversity and Inclusion Council, which is great because it brings people together from different functions, different areas, and puts them together to kind of elaborate or create the material that is going to be included within this training suite that we hope to launch later this year. So what's great about that is that you have perspectives from everybody around the world, everybody around the company, and you make sure that you're not making this just US-centric, and that it kind of touches the necessities of each one in all the regions.
Perfect, thank you. Cheryl, you're getting some love from Steve here. Courtney, could you share some of the engagement activities that are keeping people interested and active in KPA? Yeah.
And it's something that we focus on all year round. So there are some, as a BERG, we look at what our brand is. And part of that is on an ongoing basis, days of visibility happen. There's almost 1 or 2 a month, and sharing and educating that out to employees. We also have hosted some speaker events. We have one coming up at the end of June for Pride Month and celebrating what it means to be an ally. So we're engaged with employees through constant communication, providing some fun learnings as well. We do kind of some quizzes, some bingo events. So ways of getting employees where it's not that much time out of their day. We know that everyone is busy with work, but they can set aside 5 or 10 minutes, read a little snippet or learn a little bit about different topics. And then just knowing that we are here and can escalate things as well. If people have ideas, we want to hear them. And so we do some membership meetings quarterly, and so that we can open it up and hear from people and hear what's working well and what are some things they want to see.
I have to say, on a personal level, I've been enjoying the Pride Month emails. I like the graphics. They're fun activities. And I think the other thing is you're making that educational component fun. You're explaining to people, you're giving definitions. You're having some difficult conversations, but you're doing it in a very user-friendly and approachable way. So kudos to you for that. Let's see. Louise, yes, Cheryl.
No, I was going to add to some of the things that we do in the community. Through the years and present, we've worked with and given financial contributions to some of the local nonprofit LGBT organizations. We participate in Pride events. We go out into the high schools and talk to some of the high school LGBT organizations, and we bring those on campus. Sometimes we even get some hits from some organizations like we did at Atlanta Pride, where they took the brochure and they started hating on Tony the Tiger. And again, Google that one. For those of you listening, Google Tony the Tiger Pride and see what happened that day. And again, Love won at the end. We're a nationally known hate group, was on social media, but Love got on top of all of that. Because who can hate Tony the Tiger?
There's room for everyone at our table.
Yeah, and recruiting events. Now that you have my brain spinning about like more some of those external pieces, we whenever we can find recruiting events, either at colleges or with other groups virtually, we'll attend those as well.
So we have to kind of wrap up here. I want to leave time for closing remarks. One more question, Luis. How do employees continue to work with the business and employee resource groups to proactively identify opportunities for change and advocacy? And Cheryl, chime in, please, and then we'll have our closing remarks.
I think that's a constant dialogue that we have here in the company. The BERGs meet often, more than once in a quarter, with leaders, and discuss not only their needs from a employee perspective, but also provide ideas to the company about where they could take certain brands or certain products and expand them equally. So that conversation is ongoing. It always happens. Of course, not all the ideas are implemented, but at least there's an open forum for our employees to bring those ideas forth. And if there's something that's viable, the partnership is quickly enabled and it's acted upon.
Okay, only a couple minutes left. Alphabetically, closing remarks, next steps for K-Pride and Allies, or how can BERGs continue to work with corporations to create a more inclusive environment? Cheryl.
I work in the ethics department, and I saw a comment on the line about how do people talk anonymously. And one way to do it, especially if you're having challenges, is to reach out to your ethics line, and you can do that anonymously, and someone like me would pick that up and address those challenges. And one thing that we always encourage, and thanks to Courtney's leadership, is we want to hear from you. We want to learn what new things are going on where we can affect change within our company and also in the communities where we live and work.
Courtney.
To answer the second part of your question about how can to be closer aligned to the business, it's about being proactive and it's about making those connections. So finding those group leaders, whether it's marketing, it's sales, operations, supply chain, tapping those people and making the ask. That's how we've gotten as far as we have. And that would be my recommendation, is you really have to be in front of people. And our goal is for this to all be second nature, and eventually we'll get there. But for now, it is those reminders of, hey, these are coming up. These are some areas we want to communicate externally.
Thank you. Luis.
My last thought would be to corporations and corporate leaders. Yeah, I agree completely with Courtney that we need to be more vocal and bring forth our ideas, but corporations should also be more willing to listen. These employees, these underrepresented groups have great insight into the needs of a specific populations, of a specific markets that can help your bottom line grow, that can help your products expand to areas or places where you haven't thought it was possible. So have an open ear and actively engage with them and ask for their insight.
Wonderful, thank you. We have other questions. Please forward your questions to me at supplierdiversity@kellogg.com. I will get them to the appropriate team member and we will respond to all your questions. We're out of time. Happy Pride on behalf of Kellogg employees globally. Goodbye, everyone, and thank you for joining us.
Bye.